Hello, welcome. I'm Gloria Chun-Hu, and I'm the moderator for today's forum. I want to welcome you to this forum, which is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Santa Clara and San Jose, and also a co-sponsor is the Santa Clara Unified Council of PTAs. We want to thank the PTA especially for working so hard to get all of you here today. We are here to tell you about and have you learn more about the candidates who are running for these three seats. As you know, the Santa Clara Unified School Board will have 3 seats filled in this election. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the League of Women Voters. We've been around for 100 years. In fact, we're celebrating our anniversary this year. We started because many of the women who were part of the suffragette movement wanted to make sure that voters could make good decisions and were empowered and informed about how to be good voters. It's very important for us to share with you that we are a nonpartisan yet political organization for women and men, and we encourage informed and active participation in government because we believe that good government requires that each of us be very well informed. I will say that the League is bifurcated in this sense. We have, in addition to never supporting a political party or candidate, which is why we're nonpartisan, we are political, and we do 2 different things. We support separately voter services and citizen education, purely objective, nonpartisan. However, there is an action advocacy component to the League of Women Voters on issues. So we will only take a position on an issue when we have studied it. I also should mention that the League of Women Voters, particularly here in Santa Clara County, consists of 5 separate different leagues. We have a league in Cupertino, Sunnyvale. We have a league in Los Altos, Mountain View, Palo Alto, our own league, San Jose, Santa Clara, which also includes Milpitas, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy, as well as the Southwest Santa Clara League, which includes Los Gatos, Saratoga, Montecito, and Campbell. We also have a structure that allows a Bay Area, what we call an ILO, a Bay Area Board of Directors, which includes the 21 different leagues throughout the Bay Area, so we can discuss and comment on regional issues. There is also a state, California State League of Women Voters, and happily I happen to be serving currently on that state board. And we also have a national organization so that federal legislation can be looked at through our League of Women Voters at the federal level. I'd like to also mention very clearly that we would invite any and all of you who are interested in being active in the political arena and working with the League to think about becoming a member of the League of Women Voters. And I also want to ask that no part of this program be recorded or used for any political purposes. The League, again, is nonpartisan, and we look to have objective, good information from each of the candidates that may be used so that voters can make good and intelligent decisions. The format for today's forum will be as follows. We usually have an opening statement, so we're discarding that this time. But each candidate will have an opportunity to respond to questions from that we have received from you over the past few days as you've registered. And we have a good number of questions. We may not get to all of them, but we'll try to get to as many as possible. The questions have been vetted and looked at by our committee of volunteers. Each candidate will have roughly 1 minute to respond to each question. And I may adjust some of the questions for more time or less time. And then finally, each candidate will have a 90-second closing statement to make before we end the evening. And then we'll have some voter information for you at the very end. Each person has the ability to rebut a statement once during the event, in which case they will have 30 seconds for the one rebuttal during the evening. Now, I'd like to introduce the candidates who are running for Santa Clara Unified School Board. Please note that each of you who are voting in this election for that school board positions will be able to vote for both districts. So in District 2, we have 3 candidates and 2 people will be elected. And you can vote for 2. And in District 3, there are 2 candidates and you will get to vote for just 1 of those. So let me now introduce the 3 candidates who are running for District 2. Let me now introduce Bonnie Lieberman. Bonnie, please come in and join us in the forum. Hi, Bonnie. The next candidate is Mark Richardson. Mark, please join us. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
And third, Albert Gonzalez is the third candidate. And again, please join us. Hello, Albert. You will be voting for 2 out of these 3 candidates who are running in District 2 elections. And in the District 3, we have 2 candidates, and they're Michelle Ryan. Michelle, please join us.
Hello.
Hello. And Andrew Kanak. Andrew, please join us. Welcome. Now, I would like to, excuse me, go off screen for just a second and mention to you a few other things about how we're going to handle this. We have a very strict system of timing, and that will allow our candidates to know how much time they have. And so we have a timer, and her name is Marie Arnold. Marie, please join us and show us your paddles. There we go. And there's that red one that will allow us to stop and various times. Thank you, Marie. Now, there are a great many questions, so I'm going to start with the District 3 candidates. And the opening question is really to all of you. What do you think is the greatest challenge right now facing the school district? And we'll start with you, Bonnie Lieberman in District 2. And I will also ask that all of you, at this point in time, be sure to turn your mic on, because I know we had you on mute when we started. So I don't think yet, Bonnie. Okay. Yes, there we go.
Can you hear? Okay.
Yes.
I would say right now, given COVID and the stressors that are on our teachers and staff and families, that mental health and wellness is a large concern. I think that we need to make sure that we're taking care of our faculty and staff and supporting them through this difficult COVID period. The teachers are having to, build the plane while they're flying it. And I think that we need to make sure that we're providing them with mental health supports. And for students as well, I think we need to make sure that we are having, our staff is able to kind of look at the kids and see the ones that are struggling and make sure that we proactively engage with them to make sure they're doing okay, and then refer them to services if they need them. Because this is a stressful time for everyone, parents, children, and teachers and staff alike. And I think that wellness is really a key issue.
Okay. Mark Richardson, the same question. What do you feel is the district's greatest challenge at this time?
My feelings are very similar. We have a lot of challenges right now as a society and within the district. However, the pandemic is really number one, and everything that it brings. Right behind it is the reopening of schools. How do we do this in a changing environment where the CDC guidelines change one day to another? State, federal, local regulations, or even outlooks change. So it's a very difficult road, and staff have been working very hard. Our kids, I think, have had the most grace of everyone. I have 2 in the house, and they've done a great job. I think most about the Title I kids, the special ed kids, the kids that fall through the cracks that we don't get to hear from. Those are really on my mind during this time. And Bonnie's right. We're all experiencing great stress, but those at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum and special ed type kids concern me. That's
Thank
what
you. Thank you. Now, Albert Gonzalez, the same question. What do you think is the district's greatest challenge at this time?
I concur with both Bonnie and Mark as far as the health and wellness is definitely important for our students and our staff, but also definitely for our under-resourced students, those who have less resources to even have a desk at home, having some of these challenges that the distance learning they're facing with. Really, one of the things that is most pressing to me, because obviously with our staff and our there's ways that we can help our staff, and they can usually ask for help. For our students, it's definitely one of it's always challenging, not only because they're not locally close to our staff, but we're having to definitely reach out and make sure that we make those connections to to address any health and wellness concerns that may arise. And obviously, this is going to be costly for districts across the state. And as we deal with COVID and look at reopening schools, making sure that we have the safest schools for our staff and our students, these are huge challenges that we're facing, and it's going to be a big lift.
Thank you. Now, the same question to the two candidates who are running for District 3. And the question is, what do you think is the district's greatest challenge? And we'll go first to you, Michelle Ryan.
Thank you. As everyone has already said, the most overwhelming challenge we face right now is the pandemic. And there's the immediate issues in relation to distance learning and mental health and making sure our students and our staff are well. And those are but there's going to be long lasting impacts as well. The economic fallout from the pandemic we'll be dealing with for many years to come. As we look at reopening schools and how to reopen schools safely and the decisions that we're going to have to make to reopen schools, to follow the safety protocols. And I would say that these issues are not theoretical to me. I mean, I have two children who've been dealing with distance learning since March and have different impacts with it. One's doing fairly well with it and one has struggled. So knowing these challenges firsthand, I think, are really important. But in the future, we're going to have to look to the budget and the budgetary impacts that COVID will bring, even once the disease may not be primary. And then I think, as Albert said, making sure that we serve all students.
Thank you. Andrew Knack, the same question. What do you think is the district's greatest challenge at this time?
I think right now we need to prioritize to figure out how we can have in-person instruction options available for families. And I know people are hurting right now all across our society. I work with families that are worried about as soon as rent protections are gone, that they'll be evicted, that they are struggling to know where the next paycheck will come from. And we need to make sure that we're serving all families. This pandemic has hit us all differently, and we need to make sure that staff and families both have options to go back to school as soon as possible, to provide for their family in the best way that they can. And we need to have options for distance as well for families that are in situations where they're more at risk, where they have people living there that are in higher need categories. I feel for all the families out there, and I look forward to serving them.
Thank you. Several of you mentioned, and I think all of you referred to, the difficulty of here we are during the COVID-19 crisis and the question about reopening schools. And so this really is a broad question. Is your thoughts about reopening schools, and in particular, how do you handle a community that is, and not only a community, but also teachers unions that are very divided regarding opening schools? How would you handle that? We'll start with you, and we'll start this time with Mr. Richardson.
Thank you. The shorter answer is that you handle it very carefully, because as you mentioned, we have a lot of people in the kitchen on this. Staff are very fearful, not that they will get sick as much as that they will get children sick, which is a very understandable fear. Some parents are fearful that their kids will get sick at school, and others are afraid they don't have care now and they need them to be there. So we need everyone not only safe, but secure and comfortable, because there's no good learning environment when people are anxious. I think it's going to be messy, and we have to act like human beings and be very careful and thoughtful and respect each other and communicate. That's how I think it's going to get done. But it won't be pretty, and it won't be quick, and I think we need to cooperate.
Thank you. The same question to Mr. Gonzalez. How do you handle a community that is divided regarding the opening of schools, and also teachers unions who are very concerned, and how do you manage that?
Collaboration. So we need to be able to collaborate together, and the preeminent thing for that is communication. So at all levels, with our teachers association, with our classified association, and parents in the community, and our administrators, we definitely have to talk and communicate together. There's going to be some staff that, because of the risk that they're in, are not going to be able to come back to the classroom. So we're going to have to find ways, whether it's a hybrid approach, some other ways to make sure that we are able to bring back our students, because the students learn best when they're in the classrooms, and teachers want to be in the classrooms as well. But unless it's safe, we can't bring them back. So really it's about communication, trying to find the ways and those avenues, those teachers that are willing and able to come back, and those that are not can do remote distance learning. But really it's going to take a lot of communication and a lot of work from all entities to make sure that we can get this right, because ultimately it's the safety of our students and staff that is preeminent.
Thank you. The same question to Ms. Lieberman. How do you handle a community that is divided, as well as a teachers union that has major concerns about the reopening of schools?
Thanks, Gloria. Well, the way families have reacted to COVID has been very personal, obviously, and at times it's been very divisive because of the strong reactions that families have had. And that's okay. We've never done this before. I think the one thing in the district response to COVID that I appreciated was the guarantee that that parents who wanted the option to stay home were given that option, and conversely, the option was given to parents that in the event we're allowed to go back, that the county health department says it's safe, that there will be opportunities to return to the classroom. I think that decisions need to be made with the full cooperation of our unions, because teachers are people, teachers have families, and their emotions are very personal as well. So I think we need to prioritize our teachers and staff along with our needs of our students and families, and cooperate together, listen to each other, and find a medium ground.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the District 3-2 candidates who are running for the same seat. We'll start with you, Mr. Konak. How do you handle a community divided about the opening of schools, and also a teachers union that is very concerned about reopening?
I completely feel for everyone and understand, as I was saying before, that this pandemic has hit us all differently. And that's why I support as many options available as possible for both families and staff, so that we can have teachers that are ready to go back to the classroom, that are struggling with teaching in a remote environment, that feel safe to do so, that they have options to go to in-person instruction, that the families that want to go back to in-person instruction are able to do so, and that we're limiting the number of people that are going back to in-person instruction so that we can ensure social distancing, safety protocols, and provide online options for those that it doesn't work out for. I think that we can all win if we work together with the unions and with our families. Thank you.
Thank you. We've had several questions asking, particularly about how.
I didn't answer.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle Ryan.
Okay.
Same question. I got lost here.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, it's a very personal issue for me, not just serving on the board right now, but my sister-in-law is a special education teacher in Iowa, where they've been forced to go back to the classroom by the governor's order, no mask requirement. And I know from communications with her how fearful she is. And I never want to put a teacher or a parent or a child in that position. So I think what I've been happy about in the district is that all of our decisions have been guided by science, by data, by advice from the state, by advice from the public health department. And we've used that guidance in shaping our decisions and going forward. We don't have the option to be in person just yet. We may soon have an option, but we also need to be guided by the science, by our community input. One of the things I've talked about at the board in our meetings is that we do have teachers who would like to be back in person. We do have families who want to be back in person. Maybe we should be piloting that as soon as we're allowed to have some in-person instruction.
Thank you, Michelle Ryan, for that. I'm going to now have the District 2 candidates answer the question first. And since
we're District 3.
District 3.
It's okay.
Yes, the two of you in District 3. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's confusing.
We'll give you a chance to answer this question. You know, and in fact, this is perfect for you, since you mentioned special education. We had several people ask about that. How do you anticipate providing for And the statement was made that distance learning just does not work for special education students in particular. So what individual educational plans for special ed students be implemented and measured, and how can we do this? This comes from someone who's used to having that individualized aid, teaching aid for his or her special ed student that provided that kind of special care. So how can you respond to a parent who's concerned about their special ed student? What can be done? What is your vision for that? I guess during COVID-19 as well as in the future. And Ms. Ryan, we'll start with you.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the populations I was most concerned about as we moved to distance learning. How are we going to be able to serve our special ed student population? You know, as a former school administrator, I've sat in on IEP meetings. I've been through the process of developing accommodations and working with families and special ed teachers to implement those accommodations. And I know some of those things are not things you can do in a remote setting. So I know that one of the priorities that they've set in terms of bringing students back on campus is they would like us to be able to prioritize our special education students who are receiving services that are really difficult to get in a remote way. Some things they can do through remote learning, other things are far more challenging. So I'd like to see us prioritizing bringing those students back, but working very closely with families to ensure that we're doing as much as we can to meet their needs and monitor the progress toward their goals.
Thank you. And Mr. Knack, the same question. How do you anticipate, what is your vision for special education, both now in COVID-19 and in the future, and in particular about the individual special ed plans that are usually made for students? How are they measured and implemented?
I think that definitely when we're starting up in-person instruction again, when it's safe to do so, we need to prioritize populations that are struggling the most with distance learning. So this includes special education, English learners, young students, making sure that they have are given the option first and are well educated to make the decision of whether to return to in-person instruction that is right for them. And with supporting special ed remotely, I think that we definitely need to make sure that we're creating IEPs as collaborative a process as possible, and that we are tailoring them to the individual students. I think we need to make sure not to cut corners when creating IEPs that are a little bit more broad, and we need to make sure that we're also matching it to Common Core so that it relates to the curriculum that they're going to be taught anyway. And I look forward to making sure that we're supporting and putting additional resources into special education.
Thank you. The same question now to the District 2 candidates. Again, in District 2, there are 3 candidates. You will be voting for 2 of the 3. So we'll start with that same question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Gonzalez. Your thoughts about educational plans for special ed students, how would they be measured and implemented? What is your vision for special education? Not only for, in the short term, but also the long term.
So one of the things that I've addressed at our board meetings is that even before COVID, when you look at the results, we're still not where we want to be with our special ed group. And that's definitely a group that we want to spend more resources on. As we look at opening up schools, we've had this conversation as far as opening up schools and bringing in some of our more under-resourced students, whether they be special ed, socioeconomic disadvantaged, and English learners, because these groups are the ones that need the most resources, the most instructional time, the most time in front of a teacher to really help them get through this education. And we understand that it's not going to be easy, but when we look to opening up schools eventually, these are the groups that we want to bring back first. And in doing that, make sure that, as long as it's safe, that we have the teachers in place and the facilities in place to make sure that we can bring them back safely and provide those resources, additional resources, because really it's about instructional minutes and how much more time we can give them with our teachers to help them succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. The same question to you, Ms. Lieberman. Again, what is your vision for special education? How do you see individual education plans happening for these special education students? How would they be measured and implemented? And are looking for a vision that is both long-term as well as a short-term response?
Well, long-term, I'm concerned personally about kind of the lack of consistent leadership in special ed. Over the last several years, we've had multiple directors of special ed, so it would be nice to get some consistency and longevity there so that we have consistent protocols and procedures. I think that IEPs are, individual education plans, so they need to be on a case-by-case basis. There's no one-size-fits-all way to implement them or to make sure they're appropriate. And I think that we need to proactively reach out to our special education families and find out what's working, what's not. Staff and parents shouldn't have to come to a board meeting to get their concerns addressed. And I think that as a district, we should be advertising the CAC and promote it so that families know that it's there, that it provides services, and it's there for their resource. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question to you, Mr. Richardson, again about special education, and what is your vision for it, and how do you see individual educational plans happening?
I'm going to reference something you said when you first introduced the question, and that's distance learning. Distance learning is a Band-Aid for students right now. It's not adequate, but it's the best we can do in the situation. For a group like special ed, it's really poor for most, and there's not much to do about that other than our best. I know staff feels, a lot of staff feels bad that they aren't giving more to these kids. I will say that moving forward and moving them back in when it is safe only, what we do is consult with the experts, and that's staff. Particularly with special ed, the magic in teaching is within that staff, not as much curriculum, in my opinion. So we need to consult with them about how and when to bring them in safely, and then how to move them forward so that they get the most out of what we can offer.
Thank you. Let me see, I have asked it of all of you, haven't I? Okay. Now, I'm going to turn away from COVID-19 and some of the issues of reopening and as sort of a broad question, and I think it's an interesting one. And that is because Santa Clara Unified School District does include 3 high schools, right? As well as 15,000 students. Is there a meaningful way to engage and intentionally engage students in some of the decision making and some of the priority setting? Is there a role for that? And if so, what would you do? And so we'll start with the District 3 this time, and we'll start with Mr. Gonzalez.
District
and you
2?
may need to, thank you.
Okay, so actually we have more than just 3 high schools. We have 2 comprehensive high schools. We have an alternative high school, a continuation high school, and a community school. So definitely, as far as looking at what these high schools can, how we implement different things at the high schools, each high school, and one of the things here at Santa Clara Unified that we've really had a good options for our students. So depending on what option our students required, we basically have different options for those high school students. And one of the things that you found, even with our some of our continuation schools, the adult to student ratio is really low, which helps our students to succeed and try to reach their full capacity in those environments, because that's really one of the things that we're trying to do to make sure that we provide that. And as we move towards that and make sure that those students have those resources, that's the one thing that I would say that as far as our high schools, and we definitely have options for our students, and how do we improve that is one thing that we're continually trying to do, including having less pupil to counselor ratios.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson, the same question. What would you do, and should they be a way to intentionally engage students in decision-making process?
I believe they are engaged now, and I love it when they're engaged even more. So, of course, students have the opportunity for leadership within their own schools, but we also have student board members that join us at meetings. They often bring the freshest perspective to the things that we consider. Most recently, things I can remember, students were very active in the committee naming the 3 schools we're building at Agnews. And then we had a wonderful group that championed issues on climate change that came to the board. So They're very involved now. I hope they continue to be involved. And I hope that they continue to come out of our schools and then run for school board. It's refreshing to see.
Thank you. Ms. Lieberman, the same question. How do you engage students in the decision, intentionally in the decision-making process?
I think that the first step is engaging students in their own space. So going to them. We need to leave the district office. We need to leave, our perches and go to the schools and listen. And we need to let those discussions be led by people that the kids trust and who have relationships with the kids. And so we need to be observers. We need to listen. And then once we've kind of built that trust with students, then we can engage them and learn and help build bridges between, the board, the district office, and the students. The kids that tend to become leaders aren't usually the ones that have the most issues or the things that need to be fixed. So we need to reach out to those kids and engage with them and understand what they need and figure out how we can best address that and engage them in a leadership role by going to them.
Thank you. Same question to Mr. Connaught.
Thank you so much. I think that for me, it's an important part of my decision-making process. Even on this campaign trail, I've actively been engaging students. I think too often in school board races, we talk to adults because they're voters and then ignore the students that get impacted the most. I've been asking for feedback from students at all grade levels, and luckily I've had few volunteers at the high school level as well. I think it's so important to make sure that the school board races are addressing the needs of the people that are most impacted. And for me, I'm someone that sat in those seats for 13 years, so I know what it's like to not be heard and to feel like I have something that I could provide the district. I want to make sure that students of all ages are engaged, that we actively reach out, like Bonnie was saying. And that's why I'm championing issues that are really important to students, including racial equity, diversity, inclusion in our environment, and making sure that we are providing a sustainable future.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan, the same question.
Yeah.
About how would you intentionally engage students?
Yeah, we do. So I'm particularly proud of the work of our student board reps that we've had over the years I've been on the board. They are very important they bring an important perspective to many of the decisions that we make. I remember one decision that we made a few years ago where they actually worked together to bring us the perspective of students. And it was really important. It was important in our decision making on that issue. I also appreciate that we have options for students and that we allow a lot of different options for students to be in the environment that suits them best. One of the things I'm most proud of in my time on the board is that we made the Mission Middle College program its own high school and have expanded that to make it more available to students. And I also appreciate that we included students in the strategic planning process. There were lots of students involved. I was able to attend a few meetings and really see how their input was valued in shaping the direction of where the district will be going for the next 30 years. Getting their perspective right now about where the district needs to be.
Thank you. I'm going to go to kind of a self-reflection question and ask you each to think about perhaps one or two adjectives that would best describe yourself, particularly in terms of how you plan to work with other trustees. And I'm going to make this, Marie, this is going to be a 30-second response. Just kind of think about one or two words that would describe you and how you would work with other trustees and your approach to handling differences of opinion. Because I think that we have voters who want a board of trustees that are collaborative and working together. And so that's a reflection on what you as an individual can bring. So 30 seconds, one or two adjectives that might best reflect you and how you would work with others and how you would handle differences. Let's go to, who shall I start with, District 2 or District 3? Let's start with District 3, and we'll go to the two candidates there. Ms. Ryan, have you thought about that, and I hope
Sure.
I've given you enough time to think about that.
Okay, yeah. So I think I actually use the word collaborative. I think that's one word that exemplifies my work in many different settings, working with a huge variety of people, whether it's on the school board, in the school district, in different schools I've worked in. I serve on a nonprofit board, working there, always working together, building a collaborative spirit. And the other word that came to me was thoughtful. So I try to be very careful in my decision making. I like to take in all input. I like to hear different perspectives in making a decision. So thoughtful was the word I came up with to kind of reflect that.
Thank you. Mr. Konak, your 2 words that might reflect you and your approach to handling differences.
In many regards, I like to celebrate differences of opinion. I appreciate when people come to the table with a diversity of opinions. And another thing I like to do is make sure that there are seats at the table for everyone. So in that way, I'm very much a collaborator. I don't want to be a voice for all the people that I will represent. I want to make sure that everyone that I represent has a seat at the table so that they can voice their concerns and their issues are heard loud and clear.
Thank you. Now let's turn to the District 2-3 candidates who are running for the 2 positions there. And why don't we start with Ms. Lieberman? How do you feel, how would you describe yourself in a couple of words in your approach to handling differences?
Well, I would use collaborative. I want to sit and talk with people, understand them. And then if we have to agree to disagree, that's okay. We're still friends. I'm still going to talk to you. I'm still going to engage with you. I'm going to understand your position, and I may not agree with it, but I'm going to respect it. And we will move on and work together. Another word for me would be inquisitive. I want to learn about other people. I want to understand why you think the way you think. Because maybe I missed something, maybe I misread it, or maybe you have an idea that I don't. And so I would say collaborative and inquisitive.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, what would be your 2 words?
So I just want to mention that I missed the word engage in the last question. So just want to say that in the state, we're probably the only district that has 4 student board members. But just to get that across, we really capture the student voice. As far as the 2 words, I would say I listen. So I'm a good listener, and definitely, I think everybody uses the word collaborative. But one of the things that I did during my president of the board there was to bring the labor management initiative to our district, which really is one of the best collaborative tools that we've engaged in to bring our associations together. Our teachers, our classified, and our administrators and board together.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson, the same question. What are your 2 words?
Thank you. I'm sitting on the board now, so of course I have more than 2 words. I'm sorry. I'll tell you the skills I've had to employ. First, of course, is listening. The second is patience. And if anyone's watched one of our board meetings, then you understand what I mean by that. The third is conscience. Often we're brought difficult choices. And my guiding factor is always what will be best for children. And so I rely on my conscience.
Very good. Thank you. I think did I get everybody? I've been busy looking at my notes. So the next one is sort of a broad question, and I'm going to combine a couple of questions that were asked. And it's one that I think is confronting us in this age of Black Lives Matter and as we're confronting the issues of racism and diversity. So the question is how would you support inclusion and diversity throughout the district that is appropriate for each school level? And then I would add a comment that a parent made, that school celebrations and holidays seem to be very Anglo-centric. How would we incorporate celebrating all races and all cultures? So I will start with, why don't I start with Ms. Lieberman?
Well, I think sometimes we think because we live in a diverse area that we have equity, but that's not the case. We still have students that deal with racial profiling in our schools. And so it's very important that we educate our students and our staff on racial issues. I I think it would be good if we listened to the voices of our minority students, and address the issue with staff, and having a PD session, a professional development session with staff, not just teachers who teach our history, that is not an inclusive history. You talk about Anglo holidays, but our history isn't exactly diverse. And so I would love to see ethnic studies in our curriculum, not just in a history class, but throughout our curriculum to the extent that it's possible. And I would start at the lowest level and all the way up to grade 12.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson, same question about diversity and inclusion in the district, appropriate for each school level, and how do you address the question about the concern about being too Anglo-centric in our celebrations?
Our society in the last couple of years, this has become a real hotspot. And I often wonder what kids see when they look at the news regarding tolerance and equity. So I've been advocating for the last few board meetings that we teach tolerance at every grade level. Now, how do we do that? We engage the experts we have, and that's the staff. I'd love to see them bring forward curriculum that's appropriate at every grade level to address tolerance to all types of other people. As far as holidays go, I don't see why we can't celebrate them all. There are holidays I've never heard of that are meaningful to a certain group. Other than taking away from class time, I can't see what's wrong with it. So I support that absolutely.
Mr. Gonzalez, the same question, your thoughts about diversity and inclusion, and how do you include that at all levels, and then also the question about celebrations of other cultures.
So we live in a very diverse area. So there's not one big majority, but there's definitely groups that we have more student populations in. But what I would say is that we definitely have to understand that everybody has an implicit bias. There's a doctor, one of the HBCs, that talks about if you breathe, if you have a brain, you have an implicit bias. So definitely having our staff do a professional development to understand what's going on and understand how they treat and interact with our students definitely has definitely either positive or negative connotations depending on students. But AB 331, which is a Medina bill, just passed, and by 2026, we have to start implementing ethnic studies requirement in the high school level. We should start doing that today, if possible, as soon as possible. And definitely we can learn from our districts nearby, like Oak Grove, which is already implementing it at the K-8 level. So we can start doing this today. It's just a matter of working on it and getting it done.
Thank you. Now to the District 3 candidates. Mr. Konak, same question. How do you support inclusion and diversity throughout the district, appropriate for each grade level, and how would you handle celebrations of different groups?
Thank you. I am lucky to be seen as a leader locally on this issue. The City of Santa Clara has recently asked me to lead the task force on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the wake of George Floyd's killings. And I think that when we talk about this in the district sense, tolerance is not enough. We need to learn to celebrate each other and love each other for who we are. So that is part of ethnic studies, is just the start. We need to learn about each other's culture, but it needs to be woven throughout our curriculum. We need to make sure that the books that we read, that the math problems that we teach reflect a diversity of opinions, a diversity of names, a diversity of lived experiences that is ethnic, that is LGBTQ plus friendly, that celebrates the contribution of women and people with disabilities throughout our history, and make sure that everyone feels included by the education that they're provided. And as someone that grew up as a person of color in this community, having my community reduced to a few sentences in a textbook about Japanese American internment camp is not enough. And we need to change this now.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. The same question, again, about diversity and inclusion in the school district, and how would you go about ensuring that is included?
So diversity and inclusion has been an important issue for me throughout my career in education. As a graduate student at UC Santa Cruz, teaching in a wide variety of courses as a historian, learning to incorporate different perspectives, my own work as a historian of women, but also teaching in ethnic studies courses at UC Santa Cruz. It's also been important to me as a classroom teacher in diverse communities to be sure that that I have lived the experience of making sure that I have a diverse classroom and that I serve all students. It also played a role in my MBA research, for example, where I looked at gender diversity on corporate boards. I am happy that we have an ethnic studies requirement. I would agree with Trustee Gonzalez that we should move more quickly for that. But I also think we need to have a laser focus on how we serve our community as it is, where we have policies that disproportionately impact different communities. Where there are student achievement is where we need it to be for all of our communities. We really need to be focused on those areas to ensure that we're serving, to really walk the walk of being inclusive to all students.
Thank you. I'm watching and cognizant of the time and also realizing that Zoom is very tiring sometimes. And you've all been wonderful. So I'm going to now turn us toward asking you to think about your closing statements. Your closing statements are 90 seconds. And we'd asked you to think about, as part of your closing statements, not only talk about whatever you want to talk about, but also is there a question you wished had been asked that you would have liked to have responded to or said something about that wasn't asked, and why? And so this is a final opportunity to say something about why you so much want to be a trustee and what you plan to do. But, you know, is there something that we missed asking? Let's start with the District 2 candidates. Again, for our viewers, all voters will vote for both districts. You will select 2 out of the 3 candidates in District 2. Why don't we start with you, Mr. Richardson? Closing statement.
I want to thank the PTA and the league for the opportunity tonight. Thank you for putting this on. It's difficult during a pandemic. I think there were many good questions that were asked. And the last one that you asked was, what else could you have asked? There were a lot of good questions about children, but I wish there were more. I often find us talking about adult matters rather than student matters. For all candidates, you know, we have websites and we have points that we talk about, our priorities. And I would have loved to have been asked, how have you demonstrated your stated priorities? Last, for candidates, because that's the purpose of this forum, is a chance to get to know us. Why do you want to do this? You know, do you want to be a public servant or do you want to be a public figure? I think that's an important question. As a society, we've had a very rough year. If you can imagine being a child or a child with few resources during this, that's the kind of person that's on my mind as a trustee. For me, my priorities are safety and well-being of students and staff, at-risk students that I've worked with for 25 years, financial stewardship, and then structure and expertise. To everyone watching, please make thoughtful votes this voting season. Please follow your heart, and please help kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gonzalez, your closing statement on 90 seconds.
So I want to highlight a couple of things that we've been able to do here the last really 8 years. The first 4 years on the board were really tough because of the cuts that we had to make, and hopefully we don't have to go through that period again. But we definitely have had difficult decisions to make on our board in the past, about 10 years ago or so. But we were able to implement a track for our students to be A through G graduates, and one of the things that encompassed was bringing in some of the lowest, like I said, pupil to counselor ratios in the county. Also, we added health and wellness counselors, and also did the labor management initiative that really brought our district together and really helps us move the district along. Besides science camps and some of the other free things that we did, as far as having our students have free busing to our schools and free SATs and free AP tests. These are many things that we were able to bring in, really towards an eye towards equity, because if you have SATs that are free, students are going to take advantage of that. And it's really, you have to have that perspective of bringing things to all students. But there's more to be done still. As I work at the state level as a regional director for our California School Board Association, we need more funding for our schools. So in my last few seconds here, I would say that Prop 15 is something that we have to pass, and there's more things that we really have to do for education here in the state. We can't be fifth, largest economy in the world and be 41st in our country. So definitely help me bring in more money to education here at the state.
Thank you. Ms. Lieberman, your closing comments, 90 seconds.
I just want to thank the League of Women Voters and the PTA, Council of PTAs, for organizing this event. I actually had a lot of fun. But I wanted to talk about what qualifies me to serve as your board of trustee representative. I spent the last 8 years in the district advocating for education. I've served as PTA president, PTA secretary. I served 2 terms on the site council where I worked as chair. I've attended Santa Clara Unified board meetings regularly for the last several years, and I've come to know the trustees well, and I understand the workings of the district. I'm a teacher myself. I've worked with children in that capacity for 4 years. This is my 5th year. I had a change of career. And so I am passionate about education. This is my calling. I want to improve our relations with and improve our successes with our unions, our underserved families, our special education families, and all the families in between. I believe I would provide a progressive voice on the board that would lead to more inclusive policies and a focus on sectors of our society, of our community, that have been underserved and underrepresented for far too long. So I want to focus our spending on our students, on our schools and our school sites and teachers, and that's why I would like to be your trustee.
Thank you. We have now heard the closing statements from our 3 candidates who are running for District 2. You will be selecting 2 out of these 3. We'll now turn to the District 3 candidates. Voters will be voting for one of these 2 candidates. And so we'll now allow their closing statements, and we'll start with you, Mr. Knapp.
Thank you so much for your time today, everyone. Business as usual is failing, and students are being left behind as a result. I am running for Santa Clara Unified School District as a 2nd-generation district alumnus and a seasoned nonprofit professional. If elected, I'd be the first millennial, only district alum, and only Asian Pacific Islander on the school board. As Santa Clara Unified navigates a global pandemic that has exacerbated socioeconomic, racial, educational, and health disparities, the district needs diverse leadership experience that I have through my nonprofit background in children's healthcare access, homelessness, and holistic health services. My unique demographics and proven commitment to community service are vital to building bridges between the school board, students, staff, and communities of color. In this time of political divide, we need a leader that can unite us, someone that is of the community, that reflects the community, so that all students feel represented in their leadership and their education. Together, you and me, and can build an education system that values our differences, that tackles the digital divide, and advocates for students in mental health, physical health, college, and career readiness. Thank you for listening tonight, and I hope you will join the district teachers and staff in voting for Andrew Knapp.
Thank you. Ms. Ryan, your closing comments.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to the PTA for sponsoring this event. It's been a really great opportunity to hear from everyone. I think echoing what Bonnie had to say about experience and talking about what experience you bring to this role. I think for me, my mission is educating the next generation. That's been my entire career spent in education. I earned my PhD from UC Santa Cruz, my MBA from Cambridge University, and I hold teaching credentials in mathematics, biology, social studies, and English. I also have an administrative services credential and have served as a dean of academics and a school principal. Over the breadth of my career, I've taught students in classrooms from kindergarten to college. My fellow trustees have twice elected me as their board president. In 2016, the community re-elected me by more votes than any Area 3 trustee in the last 24 years. And with that trust, I've worked to build 4 new schools in the district. Some of them are still under construction, to create Mission Early College High School, to bring millions of additional dollars to the district, and to hire outstanding educational leaders. As the parent of 3 Santa Clara Unified School District students and the only credentialed teacher on the board, I focus on the best outcomes for every student. With the challenges that we face today, they require experienced education leadership to make the best decisions on the board. In my 8 years on the board, I have used influence and collaboration to reduce the political challenges and entrenched systems that hold our great teachers back from doing their best work and that limit student achievement. We must continue this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have now heard the closing comments from each of the 5 candidates. I think it's too bad we don't have an opportunity for our audience to be clapping their hands, because I know that really just to run for office and to take the time to be on the school board is a tremendous thing. Thank you all for your for doing that. Those of us in the League of Women Voters really applaud all that you're doing, your commitment and passion that is very clearly all shown toward education in our school systems. I will now ask you to, thank you again for joining us. And we're now going to tell you a little bit about elections and what's ahead. I should like to also tell our audience that there are many more questions. Unfortunately, I neglected to say that we would not be able to take any through chat. That was primarily being used to respond to any technical problems. However, we have captured those questions. We'll pass those on to each of the candidates so that as they are circulating in the community and meeting with you, however, either through some online process or whatever, they're aware of the concerns that you have raised and we're not able to get to at this time. Also, this whole forum has been recorded and will be available online at the League of Women Voters website, and we'll also have a link to it in as many places as possible, so that others, if you would like others to see this and be educated about who the 5 candidates are for these 2 districts, they will be able to watch this as well. And I then again, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you also to our League of Women Voters volunteers, some of whom are behind the scene, Carol Watts and Judy Connors, as well as Mary Collins, and also from the PTA, Anna Garcia and Karen Hovey. And I'd like to conclude this forum by telling you a little bit about elections and the important role that you all play as members in the community. Also, I want to note that the League of Women Voters, in addition to doing candidates forum, has a website called votersedge.org. We think of it as a one-stop shopping center. You will be able to find all kinds of information at this website. It is available and will include all of the issues statewide as well as in the community. We also do pros and cons. So those of you who are concerned about our state ballot measures, about the local ballot measures, you'll find some information about all of these ballot measures with the League of Women Voters. We will also, as I mentioned, have the video of tonight's forum at our website, lwvsjsc.org, for you to refer to. And another thing, of course, the League has also been very active in the whole movement for including more voter registration and working in that area. I want to go back to the website and really enforce that, votersedge.org. It used to be called Smart Voter when we started it. Oh, I guess it's been almost 15 or 20 years ago. It is now called Voters Edge. You will find there all the facts you need before you vote, nonpartisan information on the candidates, on all the measures, and most important, the additional information of who's financing the measures that are on your ballot. Going to votersedge.org also gives you your personal ballot if you will just put in your address, and you'll be able to see all of the issues that will be on your ballot. So please take a look at it. I also want to note that we here in Santa Clara County are very lucky because the county decided to go with something called Voters' Choice Act. So we got a taste for all mail-in ballots going to all voters in our primary election. It's so important because it'll now, in November, we're all used to that. Do remember that we can return your ballot in 3 different ways. You can put it in the mail, and as I recall, this is postage paid, so you don't even have to put a stamp on it anymore. You can put your ballot in the mail, and if you do so, we urge you to put it in early, long before the November 3, and I would suggest 7 to 10 days before then. You can also drop off your ballot at any one of the drop boxes throughout the county, and I believe that you will have a list of drop boxes listed in when you receive your voter information. which will be coming out the first week in October. In addition to mail and drop boxes, the county will have 100 voter centers. Remember, we no longer will have those polling places that we used to have. We have vote centers. These 100 vote centers will be available 4 days before November 3. And if you want to know where those vote centers are, we think that information, as they were last time, will be included in your ballot information, but you can always go to this important website, scvote.org. This takes you directly to the Santa Clara County voter registration website, where you can find out where all the vote centers are. You can also find out whether or not you're registered or not registered. And we want to make it very clear that it's important for you to do that. You should do this now, so that you are not surprised if you have any problems. Vote centers are really important. You can not only drop off your ballot, but it's like going to the ROV itself. You can get a replacement ballot there. You can even, because we have in California the ability to register to vote late at any time, you can also update your registration. You know that if you have moved for any reason, your address changes, that could affect your registration. You can also, if you need a ballot in another language, multiple language ballots will be available. And there will also be accessible voting machines at the vote centers. So this is an effort to increase the capability for voters to go to any one of these 100 vote centers. Again, please remember to vote, and not only on November 3rd, but because ballots are coming out the first week of October, you have a whole month to be looking over your ballot, and we urge you to vote and vote early. Democracy, we believe in the League of Women Voters, requires all of us to be present to win. It is a participatory sport. It is not an observer sport. Democracy requires each and every one of us to participate. And we hope that you will not only have learned something in today's forum, but also will be encouraging other people in your community, your friends and family, to vote. Vote November 3. Thank you so very much for joining us here in this forum.